Hi, everyone. If people are just joining, welcome. This is a Substack Live all about leadership and careers. My name's Louise Thompson. I have very dirty glasses, I've just realized. So I'm going to clean them while I introduce myself. My name's Louise. I am a leadership coach and I run a Substack called Lead with Intention, where every week on a Thursday, I give you some leadership advice and insight and some leadership coaching to help you wherever you are in your career, really. But my sweet spot is ambitious professionals who are ready to take that step into leadership, or maybe you're a brand new leader and you're really, really, really good at your job, but you're not quite sure what leadership is all about. You know you have the potential to be a good leader, but you'd like a bit of help in terms of figuring that out. I'm still cleaning my glasses. They're absolutely filthy. This must be for women. It's our particular cross to bear, isn't it? Because there's always makeup on your glasses. But I send a Substack every Thursday called Lead with Intention, which is about leadership and hopefully leading in the right way. The reason I call it Lead with Intention, by the way, is because when I was a new leader, so I've been in corporate for more than 20 years. I was a director of communications in my most senior role. But as a new leader, frankly, I made a ton of mistakes and I didn't lead well. And it's because I didn't really have kind of a good guide to the world of leadership. I didn't necessarily have the best role models around me. I didn't really have anyone that I could ask for advice. There were people that would mentor me, but then they would just tell me what worked for them. And maybe I had different life experiences to them. That was often the case for me. I was often the youngest around the board table, one of the only women. I had a small baby. So people that were offering to mentor me, it was great, but I didn't necessarily have like a ton of common ground or common experiences with them. And I wanted to find out what leadership meant to me, as a woman in my mid-30s with a small child doing, a really senior job. What did being a leader look like to me? And that's when I started to work with a leadership coach. They were really transformative. Honestly, they transformed my confidence, my impact, my career as a leader. And I retrained as a coach about 4 years ago now, 4 or 5 years ago. And now this is what I do. So if you've got any questions about leadership and career stuff in general, but I focus on leadership. But if you want to talk about career guidance, career transitions, maybe you've got an interview coming up, interview prep, then fire away. Hopefully more people will join as we get going. So if there's anything at all that you want to talk about or hear about or ask me questions on tonight on the topic of leadership, then please do so. One of the things I thought we could talk about tonight, which I talk about quite a lot because it's such a big area if you're going into leadership and you're a new leader in particular, although this can be the case for existing leaders as well, more established leaders, is meetings, particularly those senior high stakes meetings. So whether it's EXCO or SLT or ELT or even your board meeting, attending those meetings, but attending them and actually really being a full part of them, embodying your part on that leadership team is quite a big jump, I think, for a lot of people when you go into leadership. Maybe you've presented at those types of meetings before, so maybe you've gone and given a presentation or a report on your area, your functional team's area, but you haven't necessarily sat around the table for the duration of the meeting as a full kind of member of it. And I think that's quite a big jump. Even presenting is obviously kind of quite anxiety producing for anybody, I would say, in those high stakes meetings. And if you're a new leader in particular, that can be an area that you feel quite nervous about. So I wanted to cover some of the aspects that I talk about in the workshops that I lead and in the coaching that I do one-to-one with people around feeling and being not just more confident, but also more credible in those important senior meetings. So if that is helpful to people, then I'm very, very, very happy to cover that. But let me know if you've got different ideas or you would like to cover something different, or you've just got questions that you would like me to answer. I usually do these lives over on TikTok. I'm trying to do more on Substack. It is a bit quieter over here. I've noticed the TikToks are always quite lively. But thank you for being with me so far, and hopefully more people will join. Last time I did this, we actually had quite a good discussion going about lots of different topics, including ageism in leadership, which I'm always happy to talk about and bend people's ears on. I'm nearly 49, so I can talk about ageism all you like and reverse ageism. But as I said, one of the things I wanted to cover, maybe I'll start here while you think of any questions that you might like to ask, is how you handle high stakes meetings as a new leader. One of the things that happened at this workshop last week, so just to set the scene, I regularly give and lead workshops on leadership confidence and effective leadership communication for new and aspiring leaders. So organizations will kind of bring me in and say, Louise, we've got some brilliant kind of high potential people here. One of the areas that they tell us they struggle with a little bit is confidence in meetings, confidence in front of senior leaders, and the ability to communicate effectively with those senior leaders so that their points land with some impact and they start feeling and being seen as potential leaders themselves. So that was kind of the setup for the workshop. And we talk a lot about imposter syndrome, about what confidence in leadership really looks like. And then we go into more practical areas on effective leadership communication. I really enjoy doing these workshops because people seem to get a lot out of them. I love giving them. So we were doing this workshop and we were talking about meetings, and I was going through a particular communications technique that I covered. If you joined the live last time, I covered it. It's called the Minto Pyramid. I'm always very happy to go over it again, but we covered that last time. We were talking about this communications technique, and one of the participants gave this great and what I thought was really honest feedback. And they said, Louise, that's great. I can learn and I can prepare and I can rehearse a really good presentation, like my slides, an update on what my team's doing, whatever it is. But I'm terrified of the senior leadership team or the executive team asking me questions. I can give the presentation because I can rehearse my slides and my talking points and I can go through it. And I am terrified of people asking me questions. That's where I really need your help and support. And what I said to this person is, why? Why are you scared of them asking questions? Because you know your stuff. And that's kind of the first part, I think, when you are suffering with the understandable nerves, maybe even a bit of kind of pre-meeting anxiety, because these are, again, the stakes are high. These are senior leaders. You want to impress them. But remember, you know your stuff. That's why you're there. So maybe you've been invited to give a presentation on your particular functional area. Maybe you're a new leader and you're a new part of that team and it's one of your first meetings. Regardless, there is a reason you're there, and it's because the organization needs you in that spot at that table. You have earned your seat at that table. You're not there out of luck. So, we talk about imposter syndrome a lot and dismantling these kind of limiting ideas that somehow we're just lucky or that we're a fraud or that we're going to get found out any minute because we're taking up a space at that leadership table that we really haven't earned. You have earned it. So that's where I ask people to start. Remember, you've earned your place because you add value. And when you start there, you're going to automatically feel more confident. And this isn't, by the way, this isn't confidence in terms of kind of bravado and actually being more confident than perhaps your skill or your experience would bear out. It is an authentic confidence grounded in the evidence that you have around you of your career, of your accomplishments, your achievements, the fact that you are at this leadership meeting in the first place. Those are all data points and evidence points to tell you that you should feel confident because you clearly know your stuff. You know what you're doing. And once you know that, you can then become a bit more confident and you can think, okay, maybe instead of seeing these questions from the senior leadership team as something to be scared of, or in their words, they said, I'm terrified of being asked questions by the senior leadership team. Instead of seeing questions like that, you can actually start to welcome those questions. I'm going to welcome those questions because they're an opportunity for me to show people what I've got. and what I'm all about as a leader and the value that I have to add and the insight that I think I can add to this discussion, to this conversation. And then when you start to think about it like that and welcome questions, then you can relax into, stop seeing it as, well, what about if I get the answer to a question wrong? It's not about having right or wrong answers to questions, is it? It's about your ability to be in that conversation, add to it, understand it, maybe ask a question in return, maybe take the discussion somewhere it really needs to go, maybe open it up. Those are the skills that really show that you have leadership potential and that you are capable of kind of sitting around that table. And the other thing I told this person is, you might be terrified of getting questions. So there might be a scenario where you go in and you deliver your carefully prepared slides and presentations, and you've rehearsed it, and all your talking points, you remember them all, you're able to read them all, and the presentation goes fine. And you ask at the end, are there any questions? And there are none. And then you kind of breathe a sigh of relief, phew. And then you leave the meeting if you're only there to present that bit, or you kind of sit and go quiet again, and the meeting carries on around you. You might think in the short term that that's a good result. You've escaped questions. You've escaped the terrifying questions that other leaders might ask you. You're going to feel more comfortable in the short term. Of course, in the long term, all you're doing is denying yourself the opportunity to share your skill, share your expertise, and share your value with those leaders around the table. They are not going to have an opportunity to see those leadership skills that we talked about when you're answering those questions. They're not going to have an opportunity to see those because you're not giving them an opportunity to see them. You are shutting that window of opportunity down. So I hope that's helping. If you're worried about those kind of high stakes meetings, please do ask any questions, give any feedback in the chat if this is all valuable. I get these questions a lot from the new leaders that I coach and in the workshops that I do on leadership confidence. So I'm assuming and hoping that it's resonating, but please do let me know. And as I said, the question bit is really one of the first things to kind of grab and start to reframe in your mind. Let's imagine I wasn't terrified of the questions. Let's believe, because I've got the evidence to believe this, that I know my stuff. And let me start to welcome questions as an opportunity to show my leadership skills in practice in front of the people that really count. That's exactly what I would do and what I did learn to do when I was a corporate director. The other thing that people ask me often is, well, Louise, what if I get asked a question or I get put on the spot and I don't know the answer? Well, nobody knows all the answers. That's impossible. There's no leader I know that has all of the answers. That's not the point. So if there is something and you genuinely don't know, it's a data point, a fact, something that you haven't uncovered yet in your research, whatever it is, just say that. Don't try and cover it up. Don't try and kind of waffle through it. Just say, it's a really good point. I can see why you've asked it. I don't have that data point to hand. Let me research it after this meeting. I'll come back to you and we'll have a chat about it. Again, you should relish and welcome any kind of opportunity to show your leadership skills in action. And that includes your ability to kind of sit with being put on the spot and not crumble under the pressure. And it's not pressure. They're not doing it to put you on the spot. They're not doing it to put you under pressure. They're usually asking a question because it's something they genuinely feel would add to the conversation. And again, if you can start to frame it that way in your mind, you will start to feel under less pressure. And then you can just kind of rehearse and have a few of these phrases in your back pocket for when you don't have the answer. It's fine. I haven't got the answer right now. Let me go and research that. I'll bring it back and we'll have a conversation about it. Great way to answer and address the fact that you might not have that specific data point to hand. Again, it doesn't mean you're not good at what you do. It doesn't mean you're not a good leader. I don't know any leader that knows all the answers to every question. It's not a test. Like, leadership meetings are not a test. They're not an exam to sit, but they are an opportunity for you to show what you're made of as a leader in a very positive way. So I hope that's helped so far. So if you're just joining, my name is Louise. I'm a leadership coach, former director of communications. I have a weekly Substack called Lead with Intention. I like to think of it as kind of a micro coaching service. So if you're interested in working with a leadership coach, but you've never had coaching before, you don't know me, to be honest, you don't know what I'm about, you don't know what coaching really is, this is a great way to get started. So paid subscribers get full access every week to coaching advice from me on a range of topics: leadership, careers, confidence, communication. And what I also have for paid subscribers is by now, it is a, quite frankly, massive repository of leadership coaching advice, tools, tips, frameworks, you name it, on whatever topic you are interested in. And that's in the archive for paid subscribers. So if you are a paid subscriber and you think, oh, actually, I've got a big meeting this week, I want to brush up on my leadership communication, my communications techniques, I'm just going to go and search on that, on Lead with Intention. I've got loads and loads of stuff on that. If you're a team leader and you're like, oh, why do my team meetings suck? And most of them do. But why don't they go well? You know, I'm the team leader, so I feel responsible, but everyone looks bored. No one looks engaged. I don't really get what I need out of it. Like, why is that happening? Just search team meetings or team meetings suck in my search bar on Lead with Intention, and that will come up. So if you're a paid subscriber, I basically give you a massive, massive, massive range of coaching tools and advice for any kind of situation you find yourself in, and you can use them anytime. So as I said, Lead with Intention is a great way to kind of get under the skin of like what it might be like to work with a leadership coach who talks to you about these types of things, maybe challenges you a little bit, asks you some questions, asks you to think about certain things, and then gives you some practical advice and practical activities that you can get started with. So welcome to people that are joining. Again, my name's Louise. I'm a leadership coach. I started tonight by talking about leadership meetings and the nerves that kind of new leaders can feel in those meetings. So that's where we've started tonight, talking about how nervous people feel when you're in a senior leadership meeting, EXCO, SLT, maybe even board, for the first time, and you are terrified. You're terrified of being asked questions. So we've covered questions. Now I'd like to move to a slightly different aspect of meetings, because there are lots of things you can do to prepare to be successful as a leader in a meeting. But again, I don't want it just to be me talking. So please ask questions. Last time people asked some really good questions. So don't be afraid. Just ask questions. Challenge me on something if you like, but just put that in the chat below and I'll pick them up and address them. But one of the things that I learned, because I think I was fairly naive as a new leader, I was one of those people that I was really, really good at what I did. So in my case, that was corporate communications, public relations. I was really, really good at all that stuff, but I wasn't really sure about the leadership side of it. And I didn't really know what that entailed. So I made probably some fairly naive mistakes as a new leader. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate now about helping other new leaders navigate these situations a bit more gracefully, with a bit more context, a bit more insight, and to maximize their opportunities. So one of the things that I learned quite quickly as a new leader, and you may shake your head at this point and be like, Louise, how on earth did you not know this? But I didn't know it. So judge me if you will, but I didn't know this. And I bet a lot of people out there don't know it. I didn't know that the meetings before the meeting were a thing. I just thought there was an agenda for the meeting. Let's say I've got a presentation to give or a recommendation that I want to give to the senior leadership team. My thought process was I'll write a really beautiful report or slides, and I'll go to the meeting and I'll present it, and I'll present it beautifully. And then people will ask questions and then they'll accept my recommendation and it will all be great. Except that's not what happened. So I'd go to these meetings and I'd present my beautifully developed report, and it would be full of all the jargon and all the stuff that I thought me and my team had done so well and how hard we'd worked. And it would kind of land with a resounding thud, or worse than that, not even a thud, kind of okay, thanks, Louise. And I'd be like, are there any questions? No questions. because people weren't engaged. They weren't that interested because I hadn't done a couple of critical things. I'm going to talk about one of them later, which is my use of language. But the other thing I hadn't done, I hadn't prepped anyone for what I was going to share with them in the meeting. And I hadn't given them really any opportunity. They'd read the papers beforehand. Of course they had. Maybe they'd skim read them. I don't know. But they didn't know me. I was quite a new leader. Communications is a tricky one to get right at board anyway. So maybe there was some stuff in there that they didn't really resonate with, or they didn't quite kind of understand its strategic value. And I hadn't given myself the opportunity to sit down with these people before the meeting to say, we're going to be talking about this type of thing. Can I just ask you before the meeting, I'd love to explore your thoughts on this. What are you likely to what questions might you have? I've got this recommendation. Is that something that you feel is aligned for you, or, have you got kind of questions on it? Just to give people a bit of a chance to digest and explore it with me first, so that when we get into the actual meeting, instead of me spending the time on going through the report again, we can actually get into the meat of it. And I can say, I understand from talking to, some of you that perhaps this area might present us with a few challenges. I really do believe it's the right approach, but I'd love to dive into some of those challenges now and to talk to you about how my approach for overcoming them and to invite any questions. Immediately, that's much richer leadership conversation. Also, the people in that meeting going to feel more inclined to engage in that discussion with me and ask questions because I've warmed them up beforehand. So it's not about preparing them in the sense of, oh, will you support me if I do this? I want to know that you're on my side. Like that's not what we're talking about. But what we're talking about is actually giving people the opportunity to understand things a bit more, so you can then have a richer leadership conversation, ultimately arrive at a better decision in that meeting. I didn't know that that was a thing. Now I know it's a thing and I understand why, and I coach people on it, but I didn't know that was a thing. So that's an example of, how naive you can feel as a new leader when there's no one around to kind of give you the inside track or help show you the ropes or help coach you through it. There's a really beautiful, by the way, slight digression. There is a really beautiful Japanese phrase, which I think fits perfectly for that exercise, the meeting before the meeting. And it's called nemawashi, and kind of loosely translated, and you can find this on my Lead with Intention Substack because I've talked about it before. Loosely translated, it means kind of exploring the root system. And that's what I think it is. Let's say you've got the job at hand, you've got to transplant this tree. Well, you're not just going to yank it out the ground. You're going to explore the root system, find out what's connected, find out what's getting in the way, find out what you might be more able to kind of easily work around. I think it's a lovely phrase for kind of discussing what you're doing there. So that was one of the things that I learned about meetings. Again, if you're new here, welcome. Please do ask questions, ask away in the comments, because otherwise I'll feel like I'm talking to a brick wall. I do these on TikTok a lot because I'm on TikTok quite a lot. I do a lot of TikTok lives. And there are usually lots of questions. So please don't shy away from asking questions because I'm happy to answer them, as long as they're on the topic of leadership and careers. I'm not going to answer random questions about knitting because I know nothing about knitting. The other thing that I kind of didn't know and learned very quickly as a new leader, I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this one as well, because my day job at the time was a director of communications. So you might expect that when it came to presenting my reports in those meetings and delivering and talking about the work of me and my team, that I would rock that I would be absolutely brilliant at it. And I was, in terms of, the way that I delivered it. So I'd say I was a smooth presenter. I could be articulate. I could certainly do that bit. But I made a couple of fundamental errors. And I wonder if you're watching this and you've been a leader in those meetings and your conversations, recommendations, reports, presentations haven't quite gone the way that you thought they would or that you needed them to. So maybe you're having some reflections now about your use of language. So I want to say a couple of things. One of the first traps I fell into was over-reliance on my professional jargon, if you will. So everybody has it, don't they? It doesn't matter what area you work in, whether it's finance, communications, HR, strategy, operations. There will be some jargon that you use in your profession and your function. And it is really tempting as a new leader because it helps you feel more confident because it's what you know to use all of that jargon in senior leadership meetings. However, there are a couple of big drawbacks to this. Number one, that jargon doesn't translate to the boardroom. No one else around that table, for example, is a communications expert. They don't need to be. They are senior leaders. They've got other things on their mind. They've got other questions they've got for you. You're there as the communications expert. So they don't need to be. They don't need to know what this jargon means. It doesn't translate. The second thing linked to the use of jargon is that stops us focusing on the outcomes that we are there to have an impact on. So often what we do as newer, kind of slightly less experienced leaders is we will stand up and we will do what I call sharing our to-do list with other senior leaders in the meeting. And if you've ever done this, you'll know how it goes because I used to do this a lot. Well, in this month, me and my team did this, and this, and we worked really hard, and we published this report, and we launched a new intranet system, and everything was great. And then you kind of got people thinking, okay, thanks, Louise. You've just taken up really valuable time at a leadership meeting by essentially sharing your task list with us, your to-do list for you and your team. You've just told us what you've done. Frankly, we're not that interested in what you've done. We want to know, why did you do what you did? How did it link to what's important to us now and in the future? What impact did your actions have on those priorities? What was the outcome? What have you learned? What went well? What didn't? What will you be doing next? What's your recommendation in response to what you've learned? Those are the things that senior leaders want to hear from you in that meeting. And that's got very little to do with the actual running total list of everything you've done. So it's about extracting the insight, the strategic insight from your work, articulating the impact of it, and then making recommendations for how you can take that work further in support of the organization's goals. So I hope that these are some tips, by the way, that are helping. When I kind of got to grips with a lot of them through a combination of time. So I had, I spent more time as a leader. I obviously observed leaders leading well. I had a fantastic leadership coach at the time, helped me with a lot of this stuff and was part of the reason I do what I do now, helping people like you do the same thing. It does get better, but I did kind of fall into all of those little traps along the way. So I hope that's some helpful insight so far in terms of, you're a new leader, you're at these leadership meetings for the first time. How are you going to show up? How are you going to show up to the best of your ability so that you are seen as one of them? You're seen as a leader and not someone who kind of feels a bit lucky to be there, and kind of just sits there and smiles. And as long as they don't get asked any questions, it's all good. Like that's not very valuable. It's not very valuable for you or for everyone else around that table. So you need to make those experiences really count. So for me, it's about communication that is grounded in the language of the organizational outcomes. It's about being prepared and starting to forge much more meaningful relationships with those stakeholders, with those people around that leadership table. And it's about not being scared of questions, but also actually seeing questions as a huge opportunity to share your leadership skills in action. So those are three things that really, really helped me as a new leader. What else would people like to talk about tonight? Because I've always got loads of stuff that I can talk about when it comes to leadership. That's why I have a weekly Substack on the topic. That's why I coach leaders. But I do like to make these lives kind of pretty interactive and tailored to what you would like to know. So if there is anything in particular that would be valuable to you, please do let me know. Otherwise, I genuinely do feel I'm just talking to myself, and I know that I'm not, because I know that you're here with me. Um, but please do let me know if there's anything that you would like to find out, because you can just drop it like I did. You can just drop it in the chat there, and then we can pick that up as a cue, and we can talk about that. On the topic of going live, by the way, I don't know how many of you, I don't know how long you've all been on Substack. I've been on Substack a couple of years, but I'm I'm nearly 50, and I have to tell you that my first love is TikTok. So I love TikTok. I'm over there. You can find me at Lead with Louise. I do a lot of lives there, do a lot of videos on leadership. So do join me there as well. And I love Substack too. It just gives me something different. But yeah, if you ever felt like TikTok maybe wasn't for you, for various reasons, I can tell you that it's a lot more than you think. So I was surprised when I went on there to find people my age and people talking about leadership and career stuff. And yeah, it's good. It's a very different vibe, but it's good. So any other questions tonight? I don't want to just carry on, because I don't know if this is kind of what you want to hear or if it's valuable. So if there are any other leadership topics that you would like me to cover, I'm happy to. I think what I might do in the future, because these Substack lives are brand new to me, so I've only just started doing them. This is my second one. So what I think I will do, and I'll put the poll in my Substack when it comes out to you this week, is kind of give you a range of topics, and you can choose which ones to join, and then we'll do kind of structured Q&A. And maybe if someone wants to get some live coaching from me, if you're up for that, we can do that. I'll look to invite kind of maybe guests in as well, but tailor it to what you need. So Taylor, on the topic of tailoring, Taylor says, can we talk about ways to manage up? This is an area where I need to be better. I often struggle with not wanting to deal with the politics of management. And I think it's such an interesting word, the politics, isn't it? Because for most of my life and for a lot of my career, I was, a senior leader. I hated the politics, and it was that word. And I found it really triggering because to me, I mean, obviously we're not in a politics are weird at the moment. And, politics to me kind of scream out manipulation and tactics and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't, to me, certainly, it doesn't have positive connotations. So I totally resonate with what you're saying when you think about the politics of management. If you can reframe it, Taylor, and think about it in your mind of, it's not the politics of management. There are actually areas where I can, by managing up, I have the opportunity to support my leaders who, yes, are my leaders. Yes, that this person might be my manager, but maybe there are areas where I could actually offer some support to them. Then everybody wins and everybody benefits. I benefit because I get the visibility and the value of having done that. They benefit because they've got somebody that's actually supporting them in the right way, and hopefully they'll give visibility to that as well. So the reason I say that is because the more you get to know your manager or the people that you feel you need to manage up to, the more you will start to identify where you can actually add the most value to them. So I'll give you an example from my career. So I had a lot of skills as a leader. I brought a lot to the table. One of the things that I do not bring to the table is a real sense of like pinned down, like organization and planning. I am a great planner, but I'm a kind of a big picture planner. When it comes to detailed plans, it's just not my bag. It's not what I'm great at. I had a deputy head of comms who was absolutely brilliant at that stuff. And they filled a gap for me. They filled a void that I had, a skill that I didn't have. They provided that. And I provided them with things that perhaps they needed from me, like that big picture thinking, that creativity sometimes. And together, we were frankly an unstoppable pair. And, we relied on each other. Yes, she reported to me, but I knew exactly what she brought to the table, and I made sure that everyone knew it. And she also knew that I put her in the best position to maximize her strengths and also to get, a bit of coaching and challenge from me, perhaps on the areas where she needed to do a bit more work. So that's kind of what I mean by managing up. So she used to manage up to me incredibly effectively. But that was because we knew each other really well. So we had made a decision, and I had made a decision as a manager. The more we know about each other and our work styles, our preferences, and our strengths, the more effectively we can work together, and this person can work with me. Because we were open about that stuff, she was completely comfortable with saying to me, "Oh, Louise, I'm going to take that plan from you because it has a deadline we need to meet. I can see that you've got a lot on, and I'm in a good position to get it done, to have it be in a clear way that everyone can work with." And I would say, "Fantastic. Thank you so much. That sounds great." And I would go away and focus on the other elements of the strategy that only really I could do as a director, that where my special skills lay. And so we made a fantastic pair. So I would say that in managing up, think about your relationships with the people you're managing up to. Have you got that kind of shared basis of trust? So trust is it is the bedrock of high performing teams. And there is a model that I recommend you all go and look up. Again, if you're a paid subscriber on my Substack, you can find much more about it if you search the 5 dysfunctions of teams. You will see that in this model by an organizational psychologist called Patrick Lencioni, that trust is the foundation of the pyramid of high performing teams. It is the thing on which all high performing teams must build, because without it, you're not getting anywhere. And trust is essential if you want to manage up, because you need to know that the person you're managing up to is kind of ready to receive it, is open to receiving it, doesn't see it as a threat, and actually can value it for what it is. And you can only do that if you've got good relationships with them and you're able to be kind of open about these things. So that's what I would say, Taylor. There's a lot more, of course, a lot more to it, but as kind of quick tips for tonight, I really hope that helps. Any other questions that people have? So if you've just joined, I can see that some people have. My name's Louise. I'm a leadership coach, former director of communications. I'm focused on anything to do with leadership and careers, really. I would say my sweet spot is new leaders. So if you are about to go into a leadership position, if you are kind of on the cusp, or you're new into a leadership position, then my weekly Substack Lead with Intention gives you kind of a field guide to leading well. And I do one-to-one coaching as well. So always get in touch if you're interested in that. I also run workshops on confident leadership and effective leadership communication, which are things that, high performing teams will often invest in with me, to give everybody kind of an opportunity to really understand what they can bring to the table and to practice it. And I love doing those workshops. So if you work in an organization, you think, "Oh, our team could do with that," I'm very, very happy to chat about those as well. So we've talked a lot about those high stakes meetings tonight. We've talked about approaches for helping you feel more confident, to communicate better, to ask better questions, to not be scared of questions, to invest in the relationships with the people in that meeting. Talked about managing up. Are there any other questions that people have on any aspect of leadership that you like? So I do tend to focus a lot on things like confidence, imposter syndrome, effective communication, but there are lots of other, obviously, facets of leadership as well. One of the things that I was talking to a potential client about today, they were interested in doing some coaching with me, so hopefully we'll work together. But they were saying that they feel like an outsider as a new leader, and they feel like there's this language that kind of everyone else speaks and they don't yet. And what I'm going to do is help them navigate that and help them understand what's really going on here, and all of that stuff. So that they feel as if they can really take their seat. But where we started in that conversation was for me to say to them, start with understanding who you are as a leader, because that's the key. And I know it sounds a little bit self-indulgent and a bit kind of, to kind of sit there and think about who am I? Fairly existential question, but it is critical. So as a new leader, I did not know who I was as a leader because I'd never given it any thought. Honestly, I'd focused on doing a good job. That was it. Suddenly the game is different and the ask of you is different when you're asked to lead. You need to understand, who am I as a leader? What does that mean for me? What does it mean for the people around me? What are my values? What behaviors do my values translate into as a leader? Do I think I like those? Do I think other people appreciate those? If not, how can I start to work on some of those? Where's the gap between the person or the leader I think I am now and the leader that I would like to be or know that I can be, with a bit of help and support and insight? That is usually my starting point in every set of coaching sessions that I do with somebody. So maybe that's something for everyone here to think about tonight as kind of a takeaway. Go and sit and think, grab a cup of tea or glass of wine or whatever, and just sit for like 20 minutes and doodle on a piece of paper and ask yourself those questions. When I did it for the first time, I have to say I did find it fairly confronting. I didn't really like some of the answers I was giving myself, but it was the truth. But all that did was give me the fire and the motivation to start to think about, how can I make changes? That was the work I then did again with my leadership coach at the time. So you have to be honest with yourself. If you think that most people do, you may have some micromanaging tendencies just sneaking in there. Most people do, even if you don't think you do. You've got to be honest about that and think, why do I do that? Is it because I don't trust my team? Is it because I don't trust myself? Like, what's happening here? So that kind of self-reflection is what I mean. I use micromanaging as an example, by the way, because, again, most people, if you ask them, would say, "Oh, I'm not a micromanager." And most people have had a bad experience of being micromanaged. So the maths, it's not quite working there, because if most people um, say they're not a micromanager, but most people have had a bad experience of being micromanaged, and those people are managers, chances are you're probably a micromanager somewhere in there too. And it can kind of show up in weird, kind of unspoken ways. So if you've ever been one of those people, I was one of those people that would hover around someone's desk, just hover. Oh, is there anything I can do to help? Or someone would kind of tell you how they were planning to approach a project, and your immediate response was a concerned, "Oh, you're going to do it that way, are you?" That's micromanaging. Might not feel like that to you, but it absolutely is. What you're saying to that person is, "Oh, that's not the way I would do it." My judgment immediately conferred on you is that you're doing it the wrong way. That's the signal you're sending. That's how you're doing it. Well, that's not quite how I would do it. Do you want to know how I would do it to help you? And you're obviously, as the micromanager, I'm just being so helpful. Of course, you're not helping at all, because what you're doing is preventing that person on your team from finding out for themselves, from developing their own ways, their own style, and from having the autonomy and the feeling of trust to really be at their best. So, I don't know how I got onto the topic of micromanagers, but it's another big one in coaching, isn't it? And again, most people don't think they are. Most people have some micromanaging tendencies, and if you want to be a great leader and you want high-performing teams, you've got to get a handle on that stuff. I think where I started was this feeling of being honest with yourself. So one of the things that I'd asked everybody to do, so if you've just joined, hi, I'm Louise, I'm a leadership coach. I said to everybody here, if you want to start this journey of leadership, so obviously you can start with me, you can talk to me about coaching, you can join my Substack, Lead with Intention. But what you can also do is just sit down with a drink in a quiet space, think about what it's like to be led by you. Think about what you're like as a leader. Think about what you value in good leaders that you admire. And think about, are those things that I have that I would also like people to think about me? Think about the things that perhaps aren't so good about you as a leader, but be honest about it. And then start to think about, okay, do I want to change? Am I motivated to change these things? Got to have a high level of motivation. Some of these things, they might be straightforward. They're probably not comfortable to do. So you've got to be really motivated to do them. And that's, again, where a coach really kind of adds a lot of value, because what I do is provide you with a very safe space, confidential space, but it's a space where you are free to be challenged by me and by yourself in order to maximize your leadership potential in order to find the best of you as a leader. So it's never about challenge in a destructive way or in a belittling way. It's kind of gentle, inquiring challenge to help you really reflect and think about who it is that you want to be. I have made probably what is a rookie error. So we've been going for 45 minutes. I've got less than 10% battery on my phone, which I didn't realize. And I can't charge it here because it's a whole thing. My charger isn't long enough, all that kind of stuff. So I'm probably going to need to end it there for this evening. I'm going to do more of these. This is only my second one on Substack. I do a lot more on TikTok. You can find me at Lead with Louise on TikTok. I do a lot of lives there. I've got to put some more dates up for my lives, but I do a lot there. But I will be back here, and if you subscribe to me, I will let you know when I'm going live, and I'm going to ask you to vote this Thursday on the topics that you would like to see me cover, so we can get really focused on niche leadership and career topics that you really, you want to walk away with some practical advice on through these lives. Or you can DM me here, you can email me. Just let me know, what are you interested in? How can I help? And I will endeavor to do so in these lives and indeed in my weekly Substack newsletter as well. So I'm now at 9%. So I have to log off. So sorry. Again, rookie error, but we've been going for 45 minutes, so it's not bad. I hope you've all enjoyed it tonight. I hope you found something valuable in what I had to share on leadership and nerves in meetings and micromanagers and all that kind of stuff. Reach out to me however you would like. If you need support or questions, I will let you know when I'm going live next. I hope you have a great evening, and I will see you soon.